Greetings, everyone. Dell with Healing Frequencies Music here. And this particular video is about working through trauma. And again, I can only take you someplace where I've been myself. And I can share my experiences. And if anything that I share helps you, awesome sauce. With that, I found that really the best way to work through trauma is just to focus on your three-part being, because we have a spirit, we have a soul, and we have a body. And when we're working on all three parts at the same time, then we're going to have better success. We tend to work on the physical body separate from the emotional self, separate from the spiritual self. And at different points in my life, I was at different places of maturity or enlightenment or whatever you want to call it in each of those areas. And it wasn't until that I started finding ways to connect working the three together at the same time where I began to see results. And when I first started it, I didn't realize that's what I was doing. But by the time I came up with the Mountains, Gates, and Castles class, which I'll put a link below here, and what's the other one? The healing at the cellular level. It was a challenge that was done in the summer of 2024, but now it's turned into a class and we'll eventually have further challenges. I just haven't set a date, but you'll get an announcement of those if you subscribe to the newsletter on the Healing Frequencies Music channel. So I'd say about 2 years, 3 years ago, all of a sudden I started taking all these puzzle pieces and putting them together. Because one of the things that I realized early on in my healing process after I left an abusive marriage was I had a lot of emotional crap going on. And I can't call it for anything other than what it was. And even though I didn't cause the abuse, I came into agreement with it, which was my part in the process. So I had to learn to come out of agreement with the ickiness that was said over me. And I'm watching a cat fight. Hopefully it won't get any worse than it is. Anyway, as I began realizing that I had come into agreement with lies, I had to then determine what the lies were and then go what I call trigger hunting. And people don't like being negatively triggered. They think it's a nasty thing, but I like it because once I figure out what's causing a negative emotion or what's causing a negative situation, and then I deal with it, I'm free in that area. And it's going to take more than one time of when I say dealing with it, that means focusing on releasing the ickiness of that situation so that it doesn't negatively affect you. We carry our emotions in our body. And I watched an interview with someone who is on the world stage right now, who people are really coming after this woman a lot. And she said to the interviewer, well, I'm really, really struggling with some physical things in my body. I'm so stressed out. Okay, as soon as she said that, I'm like, and then she said what the physical problems were, which I'm not going to repeat what they are. But, she's only like a 20-something, maybe early 30-something-year-old woman. And it's like the whole world seems to be coming after her right now because she did the right thing. And the people who don't want to hear what she has to say are just attacking her. But anytime that we feel attacked, we're going to internalize that. And then it settles in your body somehow. And that's what happens when you are in any kind of a controlling situation, whether it's an abusive situation or you're living under a controlling government or in a controlling boss situation. There's so many places where you feel like you could be stuck in a box where there's all this control going on, where people are trying to tell you what to do, how to act, what to say, blah, blah, blah. And then because we don't have a freedom in ourselves to respond the way that our natural response is, I'm not talking about the nasty stuff, because that stuff, if you're a nasty person and weird stuff comes out of your mouth, guess what? You get to live that out in your body. just like I did. And some of the things that came out of my mouth were not so stellar. And I had to realize that. And once I went and I say repent, but the word repent means make a 180-degree turn and do something totally opposite. So that requires shifting mindsets. And I write about that process in my book called Transforming Mindsets. And Transforming Mindsets is the sequel to the But Words Will Never Hurt Me book that I wrote in the early 2000s about leaving the abusive marriage. And, you know, I wouldn't recommend reading that unless you were in a similar situation or know someone who is, because it can be kind of, to some people you might like, okay, fine. But Transforming Mindsets, that in general goes through my process of how I worked through trauma. Now that's where healing music comes in. That because we want to bring our body to a physical place of peace. We want to bring our emotions to a physical place of peace where we can rest in love, joy, happiness, kindness, all of those good, we call them frequencies because they are. They're stronger, more resonant frequencies that override the negative things. And the more that we marinate and sit in those frequencies, the more our body's going to take a breath and say, finally. And it wasn't until I did that that we had that I actually had change. Anyway, I have to stop for a second because I have a cat issue. Okay, I'm back. When you have a house full of cats, sometimes they get a little frisky. Anyway, this whole thing about healing and working through trauma, when you're using music that brings you into a calming place, then it gives your soul, and we have several soul gates. That's where your conscience is, your reason, your imagination, where you make your choices, where your will is, where your imagination is. And there's one more, there's 7 total. And then, of course, the body is your seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching. That is the actual physical stuff. And the spirit is all of the intuitive things that are not natural to how we think. So when I began this healing process, I had to go through the transforming mindset thing first. I had to shift my way of thinking about the abuse and the other things that had gone on, because we've all had trauma. I mean, that wasn't the only trauma, but that was one of the more recent ones. And eventually I had to work through some things from my childhood as well, because not everyone has had a perfect childhood. Even if you have, that's all you know. And you don't know how it's different than any other people's. And so as I talk to people about my childhood, they look at me and they go, huh? And I'm like, that's all we knew. But we can choose how we're going to respond to things. And sometimes that takes practicing choosing another option. So the best thing about using healing music in this is it brings your being into a place of rest and peace, where then you can do meditations, you can do activations, you can make declarations, you can take nutritional supplements, you can do flower essences, which help with the emotions. And then I use music essences, which help with a lot more than just the emotions, because I think that you can add your intention into that. But the biggest key to all of this is intending that there's going to be a result, which is no different than the placebo effect, which I've talked about in others. So once we get into, and you take all of those things and you make your own healing recipe, then as we heal from trauma, then our physical body heals as well. But we have to work on both things at the same time. Now, physically, I am generally okay, other than a few aches and pains here and there. One of the things that I will do is I'll say, is there an emotional root behind this physical pain? And even if I don't think there is, I will still look at it, because just because my mind doesn't think there is a tie there, there might be a subconscious tie. Then I will repent, which is basically turn 180 degrees. I will say I'm not going to participate with that any longer. And I'm going to trade those negative thoughts for something that's more positive, and then focus every day on receiving that positive thing through meditation or activation or declaration, something that comes out of my mouth that I'm speaking over myself on a daily, sometimes 10, 15, 20 times a daily basis, especially at the beginning. And once I did all of that, then my body got over that horrible sickness that I had for 19 years, of which I no longer have that issue. And so that is how I worked through trauma. And I'm finding, especially when people have taken the mountains, gates, and castles, and you've done the healing at the cellular level, I really can say that word, healing at the cellular level challenge, that there are results coming. But I think key is work on your spirit, your soul, and your body all at the same time, and find a way to bring all that together so that there is change. All right, I hope that helps some of you, because this is a question that people ask me a lot. And as you know, this is one of Del's Tidbits videos where I'm just answering questions that people have sent to me. If you have other questions, feel free to put them below this video, or you can get on the Healing Frequencies Music website and send me a message that way. All right, thank you for participating in this lovely YouTube video. And we'll see you in the next one. Thanks.